James. It's my buddy James Earl Donald. We'll just call him James. Hey, James.
Oh, hello.
And thanks
Thank
for
you for
coming
having
on.
me on.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. And just to let folks know that James and I, the last couple of 3 years, it's been 3 years. Um,
Something like that.
yeah, James walked into my store when I had still had a Valley store, and told me he was going to go to work there. Uh, and I think I said, "Well, I don't have any money to pay you," and and but we worked something out. And in the beginning, you did come to work for Valley and Beyond, and then we've had quite a journey the last 3 years of, you know, we in many areas our vision has crossed over and met up, and James's vision of creating a space for community has been, um, I think paramount, or one of his main visions, and you're just about to have that first space come together, aren't you?
Feels like it. I think so. What it looks like, anyway. It looks like it's coming together. I don't know.
I, that's right. We just a minute ago, before we went live, we were just discussing that we don't know, and sometimes we have to act as though we do know, and because there seems to be some creative ability in the idea that we do know, or that we there seems to be some possibility to create in this realm with our thoughts. Is that true, James?
I think our dominant thoughts, or the predominant thoughts, definitely guide us. I don't know if it's what it's doing, but it definitely creates perspective or perception of what we see to the world.
So in the material world, do you think that it's possible that our dominant thought creates our reality?
Could be possible.
So this whole community thing that's happening is just um, it's just random.
Well, I think that my predominant thought has been creating this space, the vision of it for the last 3 years, and just watching and taking action when action is needed, and then letting go in moments of recognizing, okay, that's not what this is or what the idea was, and just allowing others and I guess the universe kind of put it together through each individual.
All right. So you're riding the horse, but you're not guiding it. Uh,
I think I am in a way, as well as everybody else is. If I'm afraid of it, or if I'm doubting it, I'm going to push it farther away
okay.
because I won't allow it to come into my life because I'm too afraid to allow it to come into my life.
All right. So tell us about what is seemed to be manifesting, even if it isn't from your thoughts. What is manifesting, you think?
Well, we have the possibility to have a center where people can come together and hopefully find themselves, I guess, find that they're everything that's happening in the world.
Well, I mean, you're not going to limit it. That's not the only thing that can happen there, is it?
No, we're going to co-create together, inspire each other, hopefully inspire others outside of the community as by doing video like what you're doing, um, sharing our visions and ideas to the world, as well as having the inspiration to go out into the world and actually create these visions and these ideas.
Yes.
Um, my biggest challenge has been believing in myself. I've had a very
Um,
limited belief in myself of an idea that I am James and this is all I can do and this is all I am worth. And then I've also allowed other people to influence who I thought I was and worth.
yes. All right.
So
So
I would get a job because that job fit that character that I was creating for myself, or allowing others to create, even though it was still me creating it.
okay. Um,
For me, I'm realizing that everything that I'm feeling or everything that I'm doing is a projection of my thoughts. So if my thoughts are confused or angry or sad, everything that I see in the world is that. If I'm in love, I see all the beauty and all the gifts that this world is. Osho talks about it actually, and he shares that imagine our eyes are a projector of a movie screen,
yes.
and everything that's coming from inside of ourselves is projecting out onto the world. So if that's the case, that means we are the creator. Well, if I am understanding that correctly, that we are the creators, or that we're seeing what we want to see.
It's a real mix, isn't it? Um, because it's easy to drop into this idea that we're victims of the outside world. And what you're saying is right now we're creators of the outside world in a way. But then a moment ago, you said that possibly the universe was creating itself.
Well, through us, through the
And,
experience of our
and are,
collective thoughts.
what if we are actually one with the universe? That what if there is no you? I know that's a little far fetched, but what if, who are you? What do you mean? Because I mean, this is a question I've asked myself for years. Who am I? Am I just a collection of my stories? Am I you know, and am I uh, in the past? Am I in the future? Am I just now? Is there really a David? Is there really a James, or is this just an illusion? And I mean that as light-hearted as possible. That without being too serious. That there's a yeah the possibility that if there is a universal intelligence that's creating all of this, it's also creating me
Mhm.
in the same moment as it's creating you, and it's the same moment as it's creating uh, this community center that you're setting up. You
Well, and
know,
that's I think kind of the idea. If I didn't exist, you wouldn't exist, or if you didn't exist, I wouldn't exist for this moment.
yes.
I mean, it would if you didn't exist, it would be another moment. But could that even be possible?
Who is the you though that we're speaking of?
The all, the everything, the one, the large I that is everything. That
So I
that
think
it's
that
not a separate, it's not my separate being or my separate body, because there probably is no body.
uh, so what is it that has a feeling of inferiority, or a feeling of wanting to be loved, or a feeling of loving it? Is that just our ego?
I guess if we call it the ego, I mean, we've named it ego. Uh, it's it's something that's experiencing this experience.
Yes.
Um, I mean, it could be called a lot of things. The ego could be called the devil. It could be called. I mean, because a lot of times the ego doesn't see love, it only sees the pieces that are broken, and then
Yeah.
it tries to fix them. And usually when it tries to fix it, it usually breaks it more, because then it's resisting what is. I find when my ego's running the show, it's like I'm trying to swim upstream. And no matter how much I fight that water, I'm still going to end up in the same place. But it's going to tire me out and make me exhausted and not be very enjoyable. If I instead just laid back and relaxed and flowed with the stream, I'd feel very calm and at peace.
So would you then, is there, where's the point where we're involved in getting this done? Like, so you're building this space. I mean, I met you the other day. We went to look at another center. And so we were there. I was there. I saw you and you were there. I don't think you saw me, but uh,
I was in a lot of discomfort.
yeah.
So in
So
that moment, was I in the flow or was I resisting? So
that's
if
a good question.
I'm if I'm in the flow, and like, I guess that'd be a part of the emotion part, like what feels right to the body of the direction you're going. So say if I turn left and my body's saying, no, that doesn't feel good at all, that's causing a lot of harm and pain to my being. But if I turn right, that feels like it's a place from a place of love and compassion and empathy. Well, that feels the path of love. So I mean, either path is fine. It's just one creates different emotions and experience.
All right. Let's talk about the practical for a little bit.
Okay,
So what are you creating? Tell us about it.
what are we creating? There's a few of us that are trying to, or are getting this thing up and running, and it seems to be moving in this moment. Uh, we've spoken with quite a few people on the members, like it's a private member group. There's about 152 members now, keeps growing. Uh, I thought it was going to be only at 150. um, I thought 150 would be an easy number to kind of take care of everyone.
Manage,
Uh,
yeah.
Toto has a vision of that there's 150, and we can kind of look after each other in that group of 150. Because if it gets bigger than that, we start losing people. Is I guess a theory from some other scientists. He'd have to explain that one.
Okay.
But whatever, we're at where we at. I'm sure some will drop off and not be uh, on board with the vision.
Maybe always, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so the ones that have come back, they're like, yes, I would totally support this in however they can support it. And what we're asking for is a membership fee where it's a monthly fee and it's not that expensive. It's $44.44. And that gives them, and we're looking at a 6-month fee for every month just to see as I guess a pilot program to see how this works and if we can duplicate it and grow it and expand it. Um, there are a lot that have said yes, and they're like, we'll give you the full 6 months. So it's, I guess, just seeing how many is a yes. And a lot of times when we say no, it's out of fear, because right now there isn't a lot of uncertainty. We don't know where this world is going. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know if we're going to ever get to hang out in groups.
There is.
I keep saying, as a self-help group, we can. I'm sure we can get around some of the guidelines that are out there, at least in a large space, which this space is quite large. So I think
Yeah.
15 to 20 people in that space, we wouldn't be hugging each other the whole time. So I think we could possibly get away with it.
There's multiple floors, isn't there?
There is multiple floors.
It's a big house, isn't it?
Yeah, the entertainment space is an open space with no walls, and they've had 100 people in that space. So 15, 20 people in there would be
How
quite
many
comfortable.
bedrooms?
Sorry,
How many bedrooms?
bedrooms. There are 3 bedrooms, one office space, that comes with office furniture and everything. So that can be our admin space or a space where people can be doing stuff on a computer.
Yes.
Um, the other rooms, I'd be renting one of the rooms and living in that. That would be my living space. The rest of the house would be used for the center, other than me
Nice.
cooking in the kitchen.
What about parking?
Parking, there's lots of street parking all around that area. If we did get it up and running, there's a school down the road a block that has parking all along it. And then there's, as long as people are conscious of where they're parking, we're not going to annoy the neighbors too much. I'm hoping that everybody that gets involved are going to be very conscious of how they handle themselves in a situation in a residential area, being mindful of the neighbors. Um,
Are you
is
going
my
to do a
intentions.
CPR?
Sorry.
You can do a CPR?
I've done a few CPRs for this. It keeps changing though.
Of course. Yeah, it would. Yeah. It's it,
um,
it's really interesting. I think you're courageous, that at this time of what we call uncertainty, I mean, not that we've ever been certain, but it's more glaring that this is an uncertain time when we don't know when we're going to be able to social together. We don't know, anything. I find myself, my own mind saying, well, no matter what, if it's like last summer, we'll be able to do more this summer coming because the virus or whatever is going on will calm down in the summertime. It seems to, right? So, but we don't know. We actually don't know. There's the thing keeps mutating, and so it's an interesting time, and to I like that we don't know because we never really knew. But this just makes it more glaring, the reality that we don't know. And so starting a business or that requires people to come together, I think it's quite courageous. Like you're like stepping out there and saying, okay, we're going to get together. You have 150 people that are contributing and they all want to come at once. Well, that can't happen.
yeah, and we'd obviously have to have a calendar and we'd have to really gauge and communicate. There'd have to be tons of communication, which is one of my
Strong point.
hardest pieces in my own being is communicating with others. And I mean, I seem to be like stepping into this role in my personal relationships as well as in my business that I need to be more receptive and listen and have more compassion and empathy to hear what people are actually needing and wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that this is one of those, this is a teacher for me on so many levels. And it's not even necessarily if we can't meet all in groups, the space is large enough that we can do really amazing videos in it from
Yeah.
all different angles. So, I mean, the kitchen is so open that we could have multiple cameras going on in that kitchen where we could have multiple angles. We could be doing song, we could be doing
Kirtan.
lessons, kirtan, whatever in the basement where we could have multiple angles in there as well and make it feel like we're actually there.
So if normally you could put 100 people in that room, generally, by marking off the floor and with the way things are right now, you could probably put 25 in there.
Yeah.
And for 25 for kirtan evening is quite beautiful,
Yeah.
and would be nice to do, also a Friday night ecstatic dance there
Yeah. Well,
every.
and two, the space is in a residential area, but it is also right next to 14th Street, right next to the some of the shops that are right on 14th Street and close to 17th Ave. So it is a corner property, and it really looks more onto 14th Street than it looks to the neighbors.
Okay.
Even the neighbor that's right beside it is really quite off, so it's not really directly gonna be affected, that neighbor, unless we're like crazy loud outside, which I'd hopefully would be mindful of that as well.
Is there any backyard for
There
uh
is there's a bit of a backyard between the house and the garage, but then there's a area that's beside the garage, and then on the other side there's a big area along the house that's quite large, which is the 14th Street side. So there's a big fence that you can't see over, which is nice. So you could be doing stuff there as well. And I mean, most of those neighbors are hearing tons of noise from 14th Street, so they're not going to notice some voices out there. There is an entrance from the back alley that comes off of right off of 14th and the alley. So I mean, if people were walking up from other areas, they can walk up 14th Street and right into the property without going into the neighborhood.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I
Yep.
mean, we could keep it private enough and as well still have a business license saying that this is what we're doing there, and let the neighbors know, hey, we will not disturb you, and if we do, we want you to come forth, and we'd also want you to be part of this if you're interested.
Well, it kind of doesn't matter what we want, but yes, you're going to invite them.
Yeah, give them the invite and show them that we are mindful of them, show them love as we'd want them to show us.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds pretty interesting. So what else is happening? You know, this thing that I'm doing right now is the main thing is that I want to share with our community how people are doing, you know, what's going on, and how's life, and because I think a lot of us have gotten, our life has changed so drastically. Many of us are staying home day after day after day after day, and so I just wanted to, you know, and as you know, I've interviewed, well, a bunch of folks that, you know, Adrian the other day, and Alice, and Simon, and you know, I've had a bunch of, the other day, Kirby, I interviewed Kirby Seawall, which was funded. I don't know if you got a chance to watch any of them, but how's life? What's going on? How you doing?
I How am I doing? I am
Personally,
learning a lot from many teachers in my life.
well, that's
My
a bit
own
cliche. Tell
being
me
my own teacher, my own
how you
teacher
doing.
in every moment. I
How
mean,
you, really?
it's COVID has I started a relationship right at the beginning of COVID, so it thrust me into something that I was not expecting with the COVID and everything that's happening in the world. So that it was like somebody took a baseball bat and just started hitting me and saying, wake up. And so I realized that I've suppressed many emotions and numbed myself from feeling different things throughout my life.
Yes.
And so, and due to that, I react to those emotions in a way that may not always be loving or productive for the moment. I mean, they are what they are, and they're they're what's happening. But
What do you
it's
mean?
taught me to step back, pause, be patient, be more receptive, uh, more self love,
Hmm.
learning how to move that energy
So
in
what
a
do you
safe
mean?
way.
You compromise? Do you, what do you get fearful? Do you uh try not to upset the apple cart? Are you living in, what do you mean you do things, you know, I'm not going to let you get away with that. Do things that, do you
Well, I think
punch
communicating.
the walls? Do you,
No, communicating. So saying, hey, I'm feeling fear.
okay.
I'm angry. Or, hey, you know what? This morning I woke up and I'm like in a weird space that through my dreams or whatever it came through my dreams, it triggered me to feel all these feelings and these emotions.
Yes.
And then communicating instead of projecting them into my day and not acknowledging them so that everybody's experiencing my fear or my anger or causing discomfort in everyone because I'm not recognizing what's going on in my own being.
Okay. So what do you do with that?
Well, if meditation doesn't work, because sometimes sitting and meditating it just seems to like hold it inside me and then it just gets worse sometimes. Maybe I'm just not meditating long enough. I don't know. Uh, I started using yoga and different tools to like stretch and move the energy out of my body. Drawing, dance, screaming, if that's what needs to be there,
Yes.
making lots of noise. It's my partner that's taught me most of those tools that I didn't realize were. even safe to do, and sometimes feel real ridiculous by doing it. But it's it's and that's, I think, that that place that I was never shown that it's okay to be those things.
Yes.
I was always thought it wasn't okay to, uh,
So this has brought you some freedom.
in moments, yes, for
Yeah.
sure. And then other moments, I don't even realize I'm doing it. I don't even realize that I'm caught in it until it gets to a point where it's loud, and then I get hit on the head, and then I realize that I'm in it.
So who are you reading these days? Anybody? When we used to share space together, you were deep into Alan Watts and maybe some Muji and some, are you hanging out with any inspired,
I've been listening
teachers?
to a book called the Second Book of the Tao. So
Okay.
it's the very similar, written to the Tao Te Ching. It comes off of that. I'm not sure where they got it from, but I mean the proverbs and the that are in it are very aligned with the Tao. Uh, I'm sure it comes from that. And then also a book called The Shine, which is a channeled message. Which, I mean, even the messages that are in that are like proverbs, and they're just really teaching us that we're to be more aware, I guess, of our being, to be more present, to like see ourselves in every moment of how we're acting, if and it's all due to our thoughts. It's all due to reactions. Pain bodies, I guess Eckhart Tolle calls it a pain body. My pain body attaches to something, and then especially the unworthy or not good enough. That's a strong one in me.
So you've done some work around trauma, I think. Um, have you?
A little bit, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've recognized that a lot of my. Oh, 1 second. My computer is going to shut down.
Plug it in, James.
Yeah, I thought it was plugged in. There you go. Most of my, well, all my pain bodies come from trauma.
So it seems to me that one of the things that's come up for me in the last year or two is it's I don't know what it is, whether shame or guilt or fear keeps us from discussing some of the extreme trauma that many of us had in our youth, and and or exposing it, or coming to terms with it, so for many of us, we kind of deny it, or we talk about it as if just from a victim place, and have you done any work in that area?
Yeah, I've definitely been um, working at it, looking at it. Um, Something that came up from somebody, they started saying how the world is such a terrible place and that there's suffering due to it. And I asked them, where does suffering come from?
Mm-hmm.
And well, they said, well, the outside world, of me watching what's happening in the outside world. And I said, well, no, that suffering comes from your mind. It comes from what you think is wrong that's happening in the world, and it's and
So suffering comes from judgment.
from judgment. Yeah. So shame, guilt, it all comes from the mind. I mean,
All comes from judgment. Yes.
it
Yeah.
doesn't come from anything outside of us.
Yeah. But what we've kind of been told about trauma is it welded some of those things in. Trauma really nailed it in. It's easy for me to see that, if it snowed this morning, it's a good thing or a bad thing. It is neither. It's easy for me to say, well, it actually is neither. But if my mother locked me in the closet when I was 4 or 5, and I got an idea that there was something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me, or my mother would never lock me in the closet. And it kind of got nailed down by that trauma. Then it's not so easy to bust that weld. I call it a weld spot, where a belief system has been deeply entrenched, and
Well, I think our body, as well as our mind, the mind creates the story, but the body holds the memory.
so what do you suggest? What have you been doing to move that energy? Because I know, because we've been friends for 3 years, and I recognize that you've been dealing with some of that, and I think that exposing that here a bit, if you don't mind, it's a little bit vulnerable, but if might be helpful to others to see, because we're going through stuff right now. Lots of people are, I mean, I had a friend last week hang himself, he died, he's gone, just totally out of the blue. You knew him, and that's going on around us. People are full of, of stuff. And I want to encourage people to look, to really examine, to become aware, to examine, how this was made up, and what's in it.
My biggest thing for me is what triggers that trauma or pain body is being rejected or not
Mhm.
being good enough. Um, One thing I know is that I've learned about my love language, and my love language is words of affirmation, but
Yes.
also touch. So loving affection through touch. And so in my life, I've most of the interactions that I've created through my pain body is my words of affirmation. People say that I'm stupid or I'm not good enough, and and I realize that that is because that is what I think of myself. The more I start to think that I'm worthy and that I am loved, I notice that people around me start saying, James, that was such a good job, or thank you for that. And maybe they always were saying that, and I just wasn't hearing it, and I was only hearing the stuff that filled my pain body.
Sure.
So the more I become conscious of that pain or that wound, the more I can, like, okay, there it is. But then I can also hear all the other things that I was not seeing before. It's like even touch, like it doesn't have to be, it can be just somebody coming over and putting their hand on my shoulder or whatever it is, recognizing that I'm still receiving it
Yes.
and I can see that I'm receiving it. And so the more I don't know, I go back to that, whatever is going on in my mind, that it's a strong predominant thought. If I'm not worthy enough or I'm not good enough, everything in the world is showing me that.
Okay. Okay. So what about, um the journey we've been on around, being present, living, if you will, in the now, knowing that in this moment is this relationship with higher power, universal intelligence, consciousness, um, you know, is have you found, I know you've been on that path as well, of recognizing that, in living out here is often full of judgment, blame, guilt, shame, and living in here is an opportunity, to come into this moment and find freedom, find peace, find, uh, bliss, find unconditional love. Not to find it, but to realize it, um, and of course we call that God, but that's just is a concept. That's it's the word that we've used. Many of us have a lot of different ideas around that word, but still, it's a kind of a universal word. What How have you been doing with that?
Well, I think the more I drop into my presence or into my heart or being more centered and whole in my being, where I'm not up here or I'm
Mm-hmm.
not down below, where I'm more like here, I can just be with what's happening. I don't have to actually place judgment on myself or the other person.
So no right, no wrong, no
No
good, no
right, no wrong. Yeah, it's just it's being more receptive to what's happening with others and
well,
allowing them
yeah,
to be whatever they need to be, whether it is them screaming at you and them being angry, recognizing that it has nothing to do with me, that I can allow them to express their experience, or if they're sad, or if they're whatever they are. But a lot of times when I'm in judgment, I'm trying to change their experience.
yes,
And one thing actually from the book The Shine, or I think it's called The Shine, it said that every time I try to change what's outside of me, is I'm doing it with aggression. So I'm not allowing it to be. I'm not being receptive to it. So if I'm being doing it with aggression, most likely what I'm trying to change is going to come back at me with more attack
yes.
or more aggression. If I can be loving presence with it, it can actually move and maybe shift into something else.
Well, of course, everything is always moving and shifting. So
Right.
yes.
So, but it doesn't have to cause me any discomfort. It can actually, if I'm centered in my being, it can actually not affect me in a way that it harms me in any way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting conversation. I was thinking of people who might be watching and wondering, because if we haven't really reached this place where there's a discernment between what's happening out here and what's happening in here, that in a way we're the observer of both. We're not either out
Mm.
here or in here from a perspective of personality or persona. That we have the ability to be the observer, which I'm sure you do. Watch
In
as
moments,
watch. Yeah, and of course, the more we get to do that, the more we get to do that. The more we become the observer and realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my body. I'm not I'm so much more than that in a way in the moment, and yet not more of the same. More, you know, whatever I am was here before this body was born, and will be here after the body is gone. And so it then I think then we're less likely to be so serious about what's going on around us, and so fearful about what's going on around us. There's nothing to fear.
yeah. I mean, and that's where I think that for me, the more I calm my inner being and
Yeah.
bring myself to center, the outside world starts to change.
Hmm.
And if we can each do that, the outside world will start to come to that same place.
So
It'll come to a place of calmness and peace.
if that's the context of this space that you want to create, um, it can be like a little Zen monastery or a little ashram in, a little center of calmness.
Hopefully, the goal.
Well, it's either the goal or not.
It's my goal.
Oh, well, and you are kind of the man you are the context holder, aren't you?
I
You were the,
guess I'm the vision holder, or yeah, I'm holding this vision. And
yeah. So make that your context, a place of oneness, where everybody takes their shoes off, where there's not a lot of yelling, and there isn't that a lot of conflict, unless it's organized in a room where we're all moving the energy, you
all
know,
yelling at the same time.
all yelling at the same time. We're there with an eye towards oneness, unity, love, compassion.
Well, and I think that's been when the original vision came to me, that was what it was. That was the purpose of it, and that's been my purpose and my mission for my own self, is to
Well,
find that place, that centeredness. And I mean, It's funny because my partner says, she's like, when you find your center, the center will appear.
Well, I think I'm saying the same thing. You know, hold that vision of, you know, you, the center will be an extension of you.
Yeah.
And so if you're at peace, the center will be a place of peace, you know, and if
And if
you're,
I'm disturbed, the center will be a place of disturbance. And
yes.
and that's where I keep going back to that. When the world looks like it's in so much confusion, is because it is what we are inside. We are confused in our mind, and so
So is there anything ever other than confusion in the mind?
if we're allowing it to run the show, for sure, it's just a confused mess of thoughts.
So if the mind's not running the show, who is?
The moment, presence,
Yeah.
love, God, whatever we want to call it. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything outside of us that it's like this separate being, but it is what it's just this
So
moment.
this oneness, this isness,
Yeah.
this thatness, the, you know, the silence, the stillness,
I
you
used
know.
to think oneness is that I'm one with you.
Hmm.
And I realized this last little while, it has nothing to do with you. It's the oneness that I am. When I am oneness in my being, centered in my being, whole in my being, is when I'm one.
So if you're one, then you're one with all.
Yeah.
And in this moment, if I'm one with all. And if it, it, you are me and I am me and you are you and we are one together, you know, that idea. I know it's out of an old Beatles song, but still, um, and so what's beautiful is that if there's something that upsets me, if I feel upset about you, it really is me.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with you. And you know, and I can only be upset if I'm trying to get something. You know, if I'm okay with in each moment with what is if you know, if I'm living as if nothing's missing, then there's nothing to get. If
Mhm.
there's nothing to get and there's nothing needed, there's there's no reason to be upset. I don't need to be approved of. I don't need to be, you know, I can't be rejected.
Yeah.
And so having a space where we promote oneness, you know, is you know, so I mean, there's lots of levels of life to live at. We can have a space where, you know, people just want to create experiences, and
Mhm.
and uh, and maybe those experiences are going to be, you know, ultimately to help us become more one, you know, and but it would be nice to have a CPR that actually holds the energy in that space. You know, people say, hell, I want to be there because, you know, when I walk in that space, I feel unconditionally loved. I feel comfortable. I feel, you know, this is you know, a space of oneness. Could be quite sweet, you know, nothing missing. And um,
Yeah. And that's, I mean, no matter what anybody brings to come to do in that space, is that is the ultimate goal, that they find their oneness. They can be creating in the kitchen or creating video, but really it's them finding their oneness so
yeah.
that when they go into the world that they can create from that place.
Well, not only create from that space, but bring
Live it.
that,
Yeah.
you know, lift up the vibration of the whole planet. You
Yeah.
know, um, it's funny because, you know, lots of times, you know, I mean, folks here, that's where they're at. They're complaining about what's going on in the world and thinking they have to change what's going on in the world. And Hawkins taught us that, you know, if we, you know, as our vibration lifts, we lift everybody's, you know,
Mm.
and we're no longer in the problem. We're in the solution, which is love and one. Um, I don't know if that seems too airy fairy, but
Well, I think too is that I've placed a lot of guilt and shame and judgment on myself when I'm not centered, when I am disturbed, or when I am chaos. And so then I sit in that.
So you have chaos about being in chaos.
Yeah, so I've created this chaos in my household, and then now because I've created chaos in my household, now I'm feeling guilt and shame, and then I go into this downward spiral of feeling bad for what I did or how I acted. So I think that that's also a place of recognizing that I can love myself even for when I've done those things or acted out those things. And the
Absolutely.
more I can love myself, even though I know that I did this and say, oh, I did do that, but I still love myself.
Hmm.
I don't need to drop into that shame and guilt. I can just be like,
Absolutely.
oh, I did that.
Yeah.
This is
Absolutely.
how I acted.
Yeah.
And from this point, I'm going to be more conscious and aware so that I hopefully don't do it again. But if I do it again, then I'm just going to look at it again and say, oh,
Again.
okay.
Yeah. Every time when we look at it, we're bringing consciousness to it. When I'm out of line, if you will, and like fear can take me out of line. I'm in my head in fear about something because sometimes it can creep in, and it's like, oh my gosh. And it's when I bring my attention to it or my consciousness to it, and I do that sometimes, my awareness comes, and then I go to a small prayer, and prayer brings me into the moment. And as soon as I'm there, then the fear just evaporates. Just, boom. Consciousness uh, is like love. It's like the light of love, and it melts fear, and it melts anger, and it melts, you know, this idea that something's wrong. And so, I think that the key is consciousness, isn't it? Bringing awareness to the moment. It opens up consciousness. It's like, oh, and then the fear is gone. Boom,
Mm.
the judgment is gone. Um, and I think that you've gotten better at that, haven't you?
Sure.
I'm sure you have. We all have. You know,
uh, yes, I mean, I'm always evolving and I'm always changing. So, I mean, I would say I've come a long ways from who I was yesterday.
yeah. Good.
um, it's interesting. In the second book of the Tao, it talks about the Buddhist monk that has his wallet pickpocket. Somebody lifts his
Stole this
stolen,
wallet. Yeah.
and so he looks at that pickpocket with love and
Yeah.
sees the pickpocket as himself, as Buddha,
Yeah.
and then but that pickpocket only sees the pocket because he believes that's what he is.
Well, in that moment, yes, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know if I grasp, but I think I have to read the chapter before. And
Yeah, I'd have to look it up exactly how it's
yeah.
written, but I recognize that when I'm centered, I see, when I'm one, I see you as one.
Yeah.
But
Love.
if I'm in a state of confusion or fear, you're scary as hell.
Never.
And right now, there's a lot of that happening in the world.
My preference, if you will, um, is to be more compassionate, to be compassionate in each moment, because I see that lots of folks are in confusion and fear, my intent is to be there with love and listening and compassion, and and not not with judgment, not with trying to change them, just to be there with compassion
Well, I
and
mean, there's the scripture, love thy neighbor. And it's a beautiful saying to love your neighbor, but how do you love your neighbor if I don't love myself?
well, they kind of can happen together. As soon as I love my neighbor, I'm loving myself. And and as soon as I love myself, I'm loving my neighbor.
Yeah.
And you know, to say that I don't love myself is not is that's an expression in time. It's not
Mhm.
expression in the moment.
But
You
that's
know,
what I mean. So if I'm in confusion or if I'm in fear, I'm not loving my neighbor.
hard to, unless we breathe and come back into the moment. I mean, it's happens instantaneously. It can We breathe, we come back in the moment, maybe we have to go in the bathroom and pray a bit. And it's like, oh, okay, and then we're there. And when we're there, it doesn't matter where we were, you know, the past. It's like, oh, we're in love in the moment. And love isn't conditional. It isn't you just loving for ourselves and not our neighbor. you know as soon as we're upset with our neighbor because he's not behaving the way we want, and then we're out of the moment again. We're back in trying to run the show, trying to be the director. And so it happened. It's right there. There's nothing to We don't have to do anything to get there other than breathe and say a little prayer. God, save me from being angry, or help me to see what's happening in this moment. Bring me into this moment. Guide me, strengthen me, show me love. Thy will be done. All of those little things bring me into the moment. It's like, oh, okay, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Brings me into the moment. A million thank yous, and then we're there. It really doesn't matter how upset we were a couple of minutes before when we got caught. I get caught. We all get caught. And but we practice coming back. Boom.
Well, I think focusing our attention or our awareness to our breath can bring us back to the moment. I know at nighttime when my mind is thinking about all the things that I got to be doing this week and all the things that I did last week and like all the other million thoughts that are in there, my relationship, my kids, my job, my oh my god, I got to do this and oh my god, I do that.
Yes.
And I'm laying there and I'm just like not going to go to sleep, and if I do go to sleep it's out of pure exhaustion. And
Yeah.
then and then probably my sleep is probably filled with those thoughts as well.
So can I give you something? And this already, but I just want to share it. That one of the prayers that Muji has taught me is thank you. And sometimes at night, if my mind is racing and doing what it does, I will just come into thank you. Um, and sometimes I will say it 30 or 40 or 50 times, just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it brings me, boom, all other, it's everything else is gone. I'm just in this state of gratitude, not for anything in particular, just thank you. And thank you lifts me up, from wherever I was in my crazy mind, thinking of what might go wrong or what might not work out, or who's going to pay the fucking rent, all of that. Thank you just lifts me up. It's like, oh, and I'm here. I'm in this moment in thank you. And so there seems to be many ways to come into the oneness.
Well, and that's yeah, like and being grateful or thank you, that's a tool as well to help us get there. And I mean, for me, it's breath. At nighttime, I'll be like, oh, I'm there. So then I start putting my awareness to my breath, and I've started thinking of my breath as creation or life or
Nice.
love or
So
a
nice,
gift.
nice. You know
Then
what?
the more, which is gratitude for that. So when I lay there, I start breathing and bringing all my awareness to my breath and just start focusing and on that awareness of my breath. And eventually I fall asleep in a very peaceful state instead of out of exhaustion of my mind.
Yes. James, I have to go.
All
I
right.
have a fella coming for 1:30, and I'm gonna give me a little bit of time. I'm gonna repost this on YouTube. I clean it up and put it on YouTube, and then if you want to post my YouTube video on some of your channels, I'd love that.
All right.
You know, and but this is a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing this house and supporting you in whatever way I can, in the community in whatever way I can to make this a win. I think it's a done deal. I think it's going to happen, and congratulations on sticking with this vision for as long as I've known you, and
Thank you.
yeah, and making it happen, or allowing it to happen, or being part of it happening, or however we see ourselves in it. Good job. And
Thank you.
yeah, I think it's going to be great for lots of folks in Calgary and beyond, right?
It
Nate,
is. And I'm
Valley.
slowly getting more comfortable being in front of a camera, so which I think is going to be a lot of our future.
Sure. Yeah. So can I give you a tip? When
Yes.
we're talking to each other, and I do this too, I forget. I tend to look at you on the screen instead
Mhm.
of at the camera, which is at the and
Top. Yeah.
yes, and so if we're both focusing a little bit more on the camera, then we're in connecting more with the folks that are watching,
Yeah.
and like that. Right now, when you look up like that, we're right, and but I do the same as well. I'm looking down at you, in the screen, and as opposed to
Mm.
looking at the camera. So it's a good tip for both of us. And
Yes. Well, and hopefully our message and my story will inspire, and your story will inspire many. I think that you have already inspired many people uh, on your journey. I mean, you inspired me.
ditto, ditto, ditto,
So,
ditto. So I'm gonna go. Love you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Have a
we'll talk
wonderful
soon.
day.
All right. Thanks.